Foreign Minister Bob Carr has come under fire for his links to China. It's now been reported that Labor Senators Christina Keneally and Kimberley Kitching were allegedly given questions from him to ask in Senate estimates. He has rejected the claim that he was coaching them, but now some are comparing him to the former Senator Sam Dastyari. Earlier, I spoke to Michael Danby, who says that he once admired and respected Bob Carr, but not anymore.
40 years ago, when I was a young university student, Laura, there was no one who I admired more than Bob Carr. I knew him for the following 30 years. And the worst thing about all of this is he used to joke to me about people who used to work for the Soviet Union in front organisations. He used to make all of the great East European and Russian jokes. He knows what he is doing. And it's not simply a difference of view that there's a legitimate difference of view with people like Hugh White and Paul Keating, who say that we should accommodate China more, but they're not aggressive. They're not people who are saying that Xi Jinping is a person to be admired or their political system
What's the end
is
game?
to be imitated here in Australia.
Carr's motivation is?
Well, there's a brutalist Polish saying, Laura, you pay and you get. And what that means is Bob works for an organisation that's essentially funded by businesses that can only do their business in China with the approval of the dictatorship of Xi Jinping. And it's naturally, he says, whatever the party line is, I urge you and people who doubt me to have a look at this interview of his on China television in April. It's shameful. No Australian foreign minister should speak like that, but it gives you a real insight into the core of his current beliefs.
OK, let me ask you about Russia now. We've seen some pretty harsh words from Tony Abbott in recent days when it comes to this MH17 investigation. He says that Australia should perhaps think about expelling the Russian ambassador. What do you think about Russia's latest, I guess, plays on the world stage, and what do you think we should do here?
Well, when Abbott was Prime Minister, no one was a stronger supporter of his than Bill Shorten, the leader of the Labor Party, on the issue of Putin and the shooting down of that plane. Both of them legitimately reflected the outrage of the Australian people with the sending across, now it's proven, of that anti-aircraft mobile system, the Buk, from Russian territory into Ukrainian territory, and shooting down a civilian airliner of 38 Australian residents or people on it. A disgraceful act that Putin and his crowd should be punished for. I've got a better solution for Tony Abbott, and I'm hoping to convince the opposition of this. I've got just framed here for you, Laura. The first time this has been seen in public is a Magnitsky Act, just passed a year ago in the United States, passed in Canada 3 months ago, and passed in Britain a month ago. What that does is it enables executive government to name individuals, entities that are not allowed to travel to Australia, that have their funds kept out of Australia, and that can make judgments about whether their children are allowed to be educated in countries that they're seeking to undermine. So that's an effective way of dealing with the individuals. It's been passed in other Western democracies, and I'll be urging the Parliament as a private member and the opposition and Tony Abbott and the government to support that. That's more effective than just whinging about Putin and hoping that he will pay compensation to the Australian victims of this terrible crime.
Do you have support from your own team? Why isn't this Labor Party policy? And what about from across the aisle?
Well, it's just been framed. I've spoken to people very widely. I'm going to go and see the leadership over the next few days. This is something I believe that will fit in perfectly with both parties, Bill Shorten and the government's strong condemnation of Putin's behaviour. We need to do something effective about it. We don't want to just whinge and complain. this is a human rights way of dealing with these kinds of things. The generals, the oligarchs, and other people in Putin, for that matter, in Burma or in Zimbabwe or in China, can all be personally put in a list by the executive, and the Australian public can therefore have its government have some effect on these people without just condemning them and doing nothing about it.
Okay, let me ask you a final question about Joe Bullock. People will remember him as a Labor senator. He's been a long-time Labor Party member. He's now defected to the Liberal Party. What do you make of that?
Well, that's very sad. I'm a lifelong social democrat. I believe even if you have differences with your own party, it's, you know, I'm very tribal. I fight right to the end. It's sad that a former Liberal senator feels that. I don't understand. I think Bill Shorten is a classic moderate social democrat on foreign policy, a strong supporter of workers' rights in the domestic economy. I don't understand why Joe has done it. Look, it's a free country. You're allowed to do whatever you like, but it's sad. It comes at the wrong time, and in my view, people who are social democrats like Bill Shorten and myself should, you know, stay and fight and affect policy.
Michael Danby, as always, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Laura.
Michael Danby there, and of course Susan Lee is on her feet in the House.